Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the public scoping meeting for 500 Kent Avenue. Just want to make an announcement at the moment that we will be starting the formal scoping meeting just around 2 o'clock hour. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and we look forward to our scoping meeting. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. You're tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the 500 Kent Avenue proposal CEQR number 21 DCP 139K. My name is Olga Abinader, and I'm the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the New York City Department of City Planning. Stephanie Chalou, Deputy Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division, will co-host today's meeting with me. And in the event of any technical issues on my behalf, Stephanie will take over this remote meeting. We truly appreciate everyone's patience as we adjust to this remote public scoping meeting and the format that we're following, as well as some of the challenges that might come about. I do want to take the time to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to attend this remote meeting. I do acknowledge that technology such as Zoom is imperfect. However, it is an invaluable tool that allows the critical land use and environmental review processes to proceed while keeping us safe during this continued public health crisis. I do want to emphasize as well that we will hear from everyone who wishes to provide testimony today, and this meeting will remain open until we have heard from all speakers. We welcome written comments and testimony through Monday, April 5th, 2021, and will provide written comments the same attention and consideration as any comments provided live at today's meeting. Next slide, please. We'll now proceed to the formal public scoping meeting for the 500 Kent Avenue proposal. For our records, the CEQR, or City Environmental Quality Review, application number for this proposal is 21 DCP 139K. Today's date is March 25th, 2021, and the time is now approximately 2:02 p.m. Next slide. Again, I'm Olga Abinader, and I'm the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division, or EARD, at the New York City Department of City Planning. I will be chairing today's public scoping meeting. The Department of City Planning is acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as the lead agency for this proposal's environmental review. As lead agency, the Department of City Planning oversees the preparation and completion of an environmental impact statement, or EIS, for the 500 Kent Avenue proposal. Next. Joining me are several of my colleagues from the Department of City Planning, including Stephanie Chalou, once again, Deputy Director of the EARD, Winston Bonengel, Director of the Department's Brooklyn office, Alex Sommer, Deputy Director of the Department's Brooklyn office, Diane McCarthy, Senior Team Leader in EARD, Evan Elker-Kajar, who is leading the environmental review of 500 Kent Avenue within EARD, Syed Ahmed, the project manager for the 500 Kent Avenue proposal in the Brooklyn office, as well as other colleagues who will be preparing a presentation today on behalf of the applicant. Next slide. Together, we are here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, for the 500 Kent Avenue proposal. The draft scope of work identifies all of the subjects that will be analyzed in the upcoming DEIS and explains how the subjects will be studied. I'll note that the draft scope of work is available on the Department of City Planning website, Public Scoping Meetings page. Next slide. The purpose of today's meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the DEIS at the earliest possible stage. And toward that end, the Department of City Planning will have an opportunity today to receive comments on the draft scope of work from elected officials, leaders from government agencies, and leaders from the local community board, as well as members of the public. We do also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work, and written comments may be submitted through Monday, April 5th, 2021, as I'll continue to repeat throughout today's presentation. Next slide. At the end of the written comment period, the department as lead agency will review all comments, those heard today, as well as written comments received through the comment period. After carefully reviewing all comments, the department will decide what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work, and a final scope of work will be issued. It is the final scope of work that will serve as the basis for preparing the draft environmental impact statement. Next slide. Today's scoping meeting marks the formal beginning of the environmental review process for the 500 Kent Avenue proposal. We note that no decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. The purpose of today's meeting is to allow the public to provide comments on the draft scope of work and to allow the Department of City Planning to listen to those comments. It's important to us that all voices be heard today. Next slide. I will now take a moment to focus on the structure of today's meeting, which will be divided into 3 separate parts. During the first part, the applicant team will provide a brief overview describing the 500 Kent Avenue proposal. Following that presentation, a representative of Philip Habib and Associates, the environmental consultant firm for this proposal, will then provide a short summary of the environmental review's draft scope of work. During the second part of today's meeting, we will receive comments and testimony on the draft scope of work from elected officials, leaders from government agencies, and leaders from the local community boards. During the third and final part of today's meeting, the department will receive comments and testimony from the general public. Today's meeting will end only when everyone who has signed up to provide testimony has had a chance to be heard. Next slide. On to a few logistics for today's public scoping meeting. Again, the protocol is intended to ensure that everyone has a chance to speak and that all voices are heard today. If you do wish to speak and plan to access today's meeting online using a computer or tablet or smartphone, please remember to register online through the City Planning Scoping Meeting for 500 Kent Avenue page on the NYC Engage portal, accessible at www.nyc.gov/NYC-ENGAGE. A link to join this meeting and provide your testimony will be emailed to you after you have completed the registration process on the NYC Engage portal. At that time, we will add you to the speakers list for today. Next slide. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be granted temporary speaking privileges by Department of City Planning staff. At that point, you will be promoted to panelist in Zoom, and this will allow you to unmute your microphone and will give you the ability to turn on your camera. We actually note that promoting speakers can take some time, so we ask that everyone remain patient. Once your name has been called, we will help you unmute your microphone and you will be asked to convey your remarks. And to allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. A 3-minute countdown clock will run on the screen if you are participating online. And at that 3-minute mark, your time will expire and you will be asked to conclude your remarks. If you do choose to turn on your camera, we will be able to see you while you are providing testimony. Next slide. An additional note of instruction to anyone joining us by telephone today. If you wish to provide testimony via telephone and haven't registered, please select *9 upon my prompt. Listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number, and at that point, you will be given the temporary ability to share your testimony. At that point, you must press *6 to unmute your telephone, and we will be able to hear you speak. When your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, whichever comes first, you must press *6 again to unmute yourself. We do always encourage everyone calling in who wishes to provide testimony to please register using the dial-in participant hotline. And also, please note once again that muting and unmuting registered speakers does take a moment as we are continuing to adjust to this remote public scoping meeting format. Next slide. Another note on time limits. While speakers from the general public have 3 minutes to provide testimony, we do have a few exceptions to the time limits. Elected officials, leaders from government agencies, and leaders from community boards do have the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. A note to our live stream viewers, if you're viewing us on live stream and you wish to provide testimony, be mindful of any potential background noise during your testimony and make sure that your live stream is muted on your device as you begin to provide your testimony so that we avoid hearing an echo. Next slide. Once again, written comments on the draft scope of work for this proposal will be accepted by the lead agency through Monday, April 5th, 2021. And you may provide comments via email or regular mail. Comments may be emailed to 21 DCP 139K underscore DL at planning.nyc.gov. That's 21 DCP 139K underscore DL at planning.nyc.gov. Comments may also be mailed to the New York City Department of City Planning, Environmental Assessment and Review Division, attention Olga Abinator, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Next slide. Again, if you miss any of the instructions that we have shared today, please be sure to visit www.nyc.gov/NYCENGAGE for instructions on how to participate today and provide testimony if you wish to do so. At this moment, we will move on to the first part of the public scoping meeting. The applicant will present an overview of the proposed project, and this presentation will be followed by the environmental consultant team, who will summarize the environmental review draft scope of work. Thank you. We're ready for the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neville Gatchabai, representing Marble Architects for the 500 Camp project. As you can see on screen and in the documents, it is a 23-story building fronting on Kent Avenue and the corner of Division. Next slide. On screen is a local site plan where you can see the location of the site, again with Kent on the east and Division on the north, and the required boundary of the analysis area with the Brooklyn Navy Yard to the south and a residential neighborhood to the north and east, sorry. Next slide. Drawing on screen represents the current kind of land use in the immediate vicinity of the site. To the south is the Navy Yard with kind of mixed use manufacturing and commercial. To the north and to the east is a mix of residential, multifamily and single family. And our site is in the center of the screen. Next slide. The project has a few goals when it was brought to us. One was to kind of look at the immediate vicinity, the area to the north, which is being developed residentially, and then the area to the south with the Navy Yard and their manufacturing and commercial goals. Allowed us to kind of look at the site to kind of be a nexus between those two, providing for office space that may not fit in the Navy Yard and could support the residents to the north. It additionally provides a continuation of the Waterfront Esplanade that is being developed to the north and will continue within the future Navy Yard master plan. The project also provides additional access through the site to those required waterfront areas to minimize the kind of extent of streetscape you would have to kind of navigate to reach the waterfront. And also positioning of the building aimed to maintain some of the sight lines that the street and the park to the east currently have, following some of the historic street grids. Next slide. On screen, you have our site plan, which is shows on the left-hand drawing, Wallabout Bay to the left, Kent running north on the page, up and down, and then Division at the top of the site. The project includes primarily office with retail on the ground floor on the northern segment of the building, allowing for activation of the Waterfront Esplanade areas, as well as kind of the pedestrian pathway that has been added in the center of the site to provide more access to the waterfront. Drawing on the right hand indicates the areas that are being incorporated for zoning, the supplemental public walkway area in blue, supplemental area in purple, visual corridor, upland connection to the south, all landscaped, and then unhighlighted is the additional green space connecting through the site to kind of activate mid-block areas and provide access to the waterfront. Next slide. On screen is a site plan of the landscape to kind of see the pathways through the visual corridor, in and around the building, and showing access to the waterfront. Apologies for the phone in the background. Okay, next slide. The view on screen is a representation of the building from Division Avenue, looking toward Wallabout Channel and Kent Avenue in the foreground. This kind of illustrates the orientation of the building in such a way that the view corridors from both the park and along Division are maintained, and the impact of the sight lines are minimized by having the lower segment of the building in the foreground. Next slide. This is a view of the Waterfront Esplanade with Division on the left side, Division Avenue on the left side of the screen. The smaller segment of the building on the left hand will incorporate the retail, which will be accessible from Division, Kent, the waterfront, and the interior pathway. And then illustrating the connection on the right-hand side of the drawing to the visual corridor, which will lead back up to Kent Avenue. Some additional representations of what those spaces might feel like are shown at the bottom, looking north on the waterfront, up toward the visual corridor, and then at the gathering space at the south west corner. Next slide. The project is proposing a few actions. One is for initial setback distances. Another is for maximum base heights associated with those initial setback distances, maximum building height, maximum width of the, oh, sorry, I'm going to step back for a moment. First action is actually to go from a M31 zoning to an M15 zoning district to allow for office development in lieu of manufacturing. The next are the bulk requests, as I noted, initial setback distance, minimum base heights, maximum building height, maximum width of wall facing the shoreline, and permitted obstructions related to lot coverage of penthouses, which in our case is the mechanical penthouse. The project is also incorporating 196 space public parking garage. The M15 district has no parking requirement, and the project is seeking to provide parking. So a special permit is required for that. And then the others are authorization in association with the waterfront development of the public walkway and green spaces. Next slide. This represents the change from the M31 district on the top of the page to a straight M15 district on the bottom of the page. Next slide. And this page and the following page are three-dimensional representations of the M15 zoning envelope in red, and identifying the areas where we have requests on the maximum height and initial setback zoning. And it's listed off on the left and illustrated graphically on in the drawing. Next slide. Same diagram with the same massing elements, the zoning envelope and the building proposed envelope from Kent Avenue. The previous slide was from the water, reflecting how the bulk currently relates to its existing zoning or proposed zoning. Next slide. With that, that's the architectural presentation, and I'll hand you off to Jeff Rubin from Philip Habib and Associates office.
Next slide, please. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Rubin. I'm a city planner with Philip Habib and Associates. I will give an overview of the draft scope of work, which provides a framework for how the draft environmental impact statement will be prepared. It is a draft document pending the comments received as a result of this hearing and in writing during the subsequent 10-day comment period. Next slide, please. The draft environmental impact statement, also referred to as the draft EIS, will be consistent with the guidance of the City Environmental Quality Review Technical Manual, also referred to as the CEQR Technical Manual. The CEQR Technical Manual is the standard guidance document for environmental analysis and review in New York City. CEQR is a disclosure process by which decision makers evaluate the potential environmental consequences before approving a discretionary action. CEQR compares the future no action condition to future with action condition through a reasonable worst case development scenario. The EIS will analyze the incremental changes that could reasonably be expected to occur if the proposed action is adopted. Public comments will be incorporated into the final scope of work. Then, a draft environmental impact statement will be prepared in accordance with the final scope of work, which will then be published for public review and comment. A public hearing will be held on the draft EIS in which all comments received during the hearing will be incorporated into the final EIS. Next slide, please. As detailed in the draft scope, a reasonable worst case development scenario was established.
Sorry, Jeff.
Yes.
It's we're having a bit of an issue with your mic.
Okay.
Could you back up to the last two bullet points of the last slide and just try again? It was just very broken up.
Okay, we'll try again. CEQR is the disclosure process by which decision makers evaluate the potential environmental consequences before approving a discretionary action. CEQR compares the future no action condition to the future with action condition through a reasonable worst case development scenario. The EIS will analyze the incremental changes that could reasonably be expected to occur if the proposed action is adopted. Public comments will be incorporated into a final scope of work. Then a draft EIS will be prepared in accordance with the final scope of work, which will then be published for public review and comment. A public hearing will be held on the draft EIS in which all comments received during the hearing will be incorporated into the final EIS. Next slide, please. As detailed in the draft scope, a reasonable worst case development scenario was established for the 2024 analysis year. In the no action condition, it is assumed that the project site will be redeveloped with an as-of-right development, which would be predominantly occupied by warehouse use with some office space and parking. In the with action condition, it is assumed that the project site would be redeveloped with a development facilitated by the requested approvals, which would be predominantly office use with some retail space and parking.
Jeff, we're having the same issue again.
Yes.
Could you just try the last two bullet points?
Give me a moment here to. Okay, so we'll go to the future no action and the future with action. Thank you for your patience. In the no action condition, it is assumed that the project site would be redeveloped with an as-of-right development, which would be predominantly occupied by warehouse use with some office space and parking. In the with action condition, it is assumed the project site would be redeveloped with a development facilitated by the requested approvals, which would be predominantly office use with some retail space and parking. The with action condition would also include waterfront public open space. Using criteria outlined in the CEQR technical manual, the EIS will determine if significant adverse impacts would occur. Next slide, please. Shown in this table, when comparing no action condition to the with action condition, the proposed action is expected to result in net increases of approximately 555,435 gross square feet of office space, 20,476 gross square feet of retail space, and 37,233 square feet of public open space, which is the equivalent to 0.85 acres. The proposed action is also expected to result in net decreases of approximately 181,401 gross square feet of warehouse space and 83 parking spaces. These incremental changes between the no action and the with action condition highlighted in the table on the slide will serve as a basis for the impact analysis in the DEIS. Next slide, please. As detailed in the draft scope of work and shown on the slide, the proposed action requires consideration of several technical areas which are listed in this slide. Among these, I will briefly highlight three key areas: land use, zoning, and public policy, urban design and visual resources, and transportation. Since the proposed action includes a zoning map amendment that will allow for increased density and will also include special permits and an authorization allowing modifications to certain zoning regulations, the EIS will include a detailed analysis of the proposed action's effects on land use, zoning, and public policy. In addition, since the project site is located in the city's designated coastal zone, this chapter of the EIS will also include an assessment to determine if the proposed action is consistent with the city's waterfront revitalization program. Also, since the proposed action would result in a building volume that is not currently allowed under zoning, the EIS will analyze the effects of the proposed action on urban design and visual resources. In addition, as the proposed action would result in an increase in travel demand, the EIS will include detailed analyses of the proposed action's effects on traffic, transit, and pedestrian conditions. The draft scope of work provides a more detailed outline of how all the technical areas listed in this slide will be examined and identifies study areas, types of data to be gathered, how these data would be analyzed, and how potential impacts would be quantified. Next slide, please. In addition, the EIS will include a mitigation chapter, which describes mitigation measures to address any significant adverse impacts that are identified. Where impacts cannot be mitigated, they will be identified as unavoidable adverse impacts. An alternatives chapter will be included in the EIS to evaluate alternative development proposals that may reduce or eliminate any significant adverse impacts. The alternatives are usually defined when the full extent of the proposed action's impacts are determined. As of now, the EIS is expected to analyze a no action alternative, which would be that the site stays the way it is today, and a no impact / no unmitigated impact alternative, which eliminates or avoids all action generated impacts. Additional alternatives may be developed during the scoping process. A chapter summarizing all comments in the draft scope in the EIS will be included as well. The draft scope will be viewed in its entirety online on the Department of City Planning website. Thank you, and now I turn you back to Olga Abinader.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's move on to the next slide, please. All right. We are now ready to move on to part 2 of today's public scoping meeting. At this time, we are ready to receive testimony from elected officials, community board leaders, and leaders from government agencies. I'll note for a moment that when it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be promoted to panelist in Zoom. And this will allow you to unmute yourself and will give you the ability to also turn on your camera while providing testimony. There will be a short period where it will appear that you're no longer in the meeting, but do not be alarmed. This is part of the Zoom process and you will be joined, we will be able to see you and hear you very shortly. As in other scoping meetings, if speakers experience any technical challenges that prevent them from sharing their testimony, we will pause, move on to the next speaker, and allow those speakers experiencing challenges to troubleshoot in the background. We will be able to call your name at a later time to give you your moment to provide testimony. If this does happen to you, please revisit the how-to guides page on the NYC Engage portal for assistance. Any callers needing assistance, hang up the phone, call 877-853-5247, and you'll be prompted for a meeting ID and a password. The meeting ID is 618-237-7396, 618-237-7396. And when prompted for the password, dial the number 1. We'll move on to our first speaker in this category. Our first speaker is Richard Barrack on behalf of Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. We're ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
All right, thank you for having me. My name is Richard Barrack. I'm the Land Use Director for Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. Today, I am here primarily to listen to the comments, and we will take those comments into consideration in formulating our final comments that we will submit in writing. And after certification, after the community board has its public hearing, the borough president will also have a public hearing during the ULURP process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, I will now check with my colleagues to see if there are any other speakers who have signed up to provide testimony in this particular category. All right, I'm hearing from my colleagues that we do not have any other speakers in this category. And now we will proceed to part 3 of today's public scoping meeting, where members of the general public will have the ability to provide testimony for up to 3 minutes. I'd like to ask our production team to now display a 3-minute time tracker on the screen so that we can track our speakers who are providing testimony at this time. All right, it looks like we're ready and set up. And now I'll call on, I believe, the only speaker who has signed up for this category. And please forgive me for mispronouncing your name, Sinead Wadsworth. We are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself. Sinead Wadsworth. Sinead Wadsworth. We do see that you're in the Zoom meeting. Please unmute yourself when you have a moment. We're ready for your testimony.
Good afternoon. Hi, Sinead Wadsworth.
Sinead Wadsworth, we are having trouble with your audio. We're not able to hear you at the moment. All right, so why don't we hit the mute button just for a moment?
Representatives. I primarily cover Brooklyn.
All right, let's reset the clock for Sinead Wadsworth. I think we're just having a few technical difficulties with hearing you. Sinead Wadsworth, why don't you unmute yourself right now so we can try and hear you again and see if that works better. And then we'll start the clock when you're ready.
Unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
You guys
My apologies, Sinead. We are not able to hear you. I think there's some trouble with the connection.
can hear me, right?
No, we are having trouble hearing you once again. So why don't we take a moment to just help you with some troubleshooting. We may need you to call into the meeting if there's a challenge with the internet connection. So we're going to hit mute just one more time, just because we're having trouble hearing you. And let's see if we can allow you to troubleshoot in the background so that we can have you join us. I'm really having a hard time getting that audio in from you, Sinead.
Okay.
All right. So while Sinead is working with one of our team members in the background, we'll now see if there are any other speakers who would like to join us and would like to provide testimony. So please bear with us so that we move on to see if there are any other speakers who might have a little bit better luck. All right, I am seeing we have another speaker who'd like to provide testimony at this time. Speaker number 3 is Terry Carda. Terry Carda, please unmute yourself. We're ready for your testimony. We'll give Terry a minute.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Great. Thank you for having this meeting and allowing me the opportunity to testify. My name is Terry Carda, and I'm the Executive Director of Brooklyn Greenway Initiative. We're a nonprofit organization that's been around for about 2 decades, building out and helping the city to envision a green ribbon along the entire Brooklyn waterfront. As you are well aware, Kent Avenue comprises part of the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway, which is a 26-mile route that travels from Greenpoint all the way around to East New York. The Kent Avenue section of the Greenway is one of the most traveled bike lanes within New York City's 5 boroughs, second perhaps only to the Hudson River Greenway, which is the heaviest traveled greenway in the country. So what I'm trying to get at is that this is a critical corridor for people who are commuting using active modes of transportation, such as bicycles, such as scooters, which are growing in number on our streets, and even people, walking to work or to ferry terminals or other modes of transit. Also, the Greenway is a vital asset for open space and recreation. My question for you all, and as part of the environmental review, is about access to the site and what the site construction will, what that site plan will be for safety of Greenway users throughout the construction process. And then once construction is complete, how access to the Greenway as well as the waterfront will be maintained. In particular, I would love to see renderings of the site that include the Greenway as part of the current state of the streetscape along Kent Avenue, and then hear more about how safety of users will be mitigated over time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And as I mentioned earlier in the instructions component of this public scoping meeting, today is a listening session. While we won't be responding directly to questions live, we will be providing a final scope of work with a response to comments. And in that particular document, we will be providing a formal response in writing to address this particular, any comments received today. So just wanted to clarify that for you, Terry, for any other listeners who we might have.
Yes, thank you.
All right, you're very welcome. Okay, so we are now moving on to the instruction slide, just to provide more guidance for any others who are having a bit of trouble joining us. I would like for Sinead, who had some trouble joining and providing testimony, to please review the instruction slide and dial into our scoping meeting directly. Again, call one of our toll-free numbers. I'll share one now, 877-853-5247. And if Sinead, if you're able to hear us, if you can try and dial in, we will have somebody provide you assistance so that we can hear your testimony today. Again, it's so important that all voices be heard today, so we want to give everyone a chance to have a moment to provide their testimony.
Can you hear me?
Oh, Sinead, we are able to hear you.
Oh,
Very
great.
good. Fantastic. All right, that's great. So give us a moment. We're going to now project our 3-minute timer so you can see that.
Okay.
Looks like we're ready for you. Sinead, take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Sanad Wadsworth. I am a council representative for the New York City District Council of Carpenters, and this project looks wonderful in Brooklyn. I just wanted to find out, or rather say if local hiring would be a priority, as well as responsible contractors for the development of this project. We would love the opportunity to provide careers for the community And we look forward to helping out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and my apologies for mispronouncing your name. We appreciate your patience in joining us once again to provide your testimony. As I mentioned, we will be providing a response in writing in the final scope of work, so please look out for that. Thank you for your participation. All right, just going to do a brief check-in with my colleagues to see if we have any other members of the public who have signed up to speak. And in the meantime, we are projecting our instruction slide for anyone who has joined us online. Not seeing too many other participants at this time. I'm not sure if we have any callers at this time who have decided to provide testimony. So I will just do a brief announcement. If anyone has telephoned into our scoping meeting and has decided at the last minute that they'd like to provide testimony, we'd like to hear from you. Indicate to the Department of City Planning that you'd like to speak by dialing *9. Dialing *9 will let us know that you'd like to provide testimony if you have called in at this time. And if we do get anyone who has called in would like to provide testimony, I will get a list of your phone numbers and we'll call them as received. So let's give folks a moment to let us know if anyone's called in and would like to provide their testimony at this time. Thanks everyone for your patience. We are checking in momentarily with our colleagues to see if anyone has decided to dial in. And I'm seeing in real time that we have no dial-ins at this time and no other speakers have actually registered to speak. So at this time, we're going to take a brief 5-minute pause. We're going to ask our production team to display the 5-minute tracker on the screen. We're going to take a 5-minute break for any members of the public who wish to complete the registration process and provide any testimony to do so during these next 5 minutes. And the time is approximately 2:43 p.m. We'll join you right back here at 2:48 p.m. to see if there are any other speakers who'd like to share their comments. Thank you, and we will see you shortly. All right, good afternoon and welcome back. You are tuning in to the remote public scoping meeting for the 500 Kent Avenue proposal, seeker number 21 DCP 139K. Once again, I'm Olga Abinator, the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the New York City Department of City Planning. We are currently on part 3 of today's public scoping meeting, where we are asking any members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes. I am hearing from my colleagues that during our 5-minute break, we did not receive any new registrants or dial-ins or members of the public who wanted to provide testimony today. So if no one else wishes to provide testimony at this time, we will be moving ahead to close today's public scoping meeting. Again, to anyone who had difficulties providing testimony today, please recall that you may provide written testimony via email or regular mail. I'll ask our production team to display our email address and mailing information. Here we go. Written comments will be accepted by the Department of City Planning through Monday, April 5th, 2021. Your comments may be emailed to 21DCP139K_DL@planning.nyc.gov. And your comments can be mailed to the New York City Department of City Planning, Environmental Assessment and Review Division, attention Olga Abinator, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. The deadline, once again, is Monday, April 5th, 2021. The time is currently 2:50 p.m. and today's public scoping meeting is now closed. Thanks to everyone who made it to this meeting today, and we look forward to seeing your comments in writing. Have a great day.